Astrophysical Journal, Journal of Astrophysics and Astronomy, to mention some. Thereafter, he was a research associate at the Korea Astronomy and Space Science Institute, South Korea, in 2007. He later qualified the Civil Services examination conducted by the UPSC in 2007 with an All India rank of 210, having History and Political Science and International Relations as his optional papers. Thereafter, he was inducted into the Indian Ordnance Factory Services Administration. Since then, he also specializes on Maoist insurgency, left-wing extremism, and in that capacity has published several peer-reviewed papers and essays in reputed journals. He has also been a commentator for television news channels. He has been published widely at national and international levels, primarily among them being UK-based Strategic Analysis, ETH Zurich, JSTOR, Washington-based Diplomatic Courier, Tokyo-based The Diplomat, UPA Asia, Manohar Parikar, IDSA, the KPS Guild Journal of Conflict and Resolution, Fault Lines, Center for Land Warfare Studies, Institution of Peace and Conflict Studies, New Delhi-based Geopolitics, among others. He has also interestingly published a book in 2017 titled Modern World History for civil services aspirants, which is currently undergoing a fourth edition, authored by himself. Dr. Udipan is also a recipient of various awards. He was honored with an award for outstanding contribution in administration at GSF, AWAIL. He has also received a citation from the Satyendranath Tagore Civil Services Study Center, Government of West Bengal, recognizing his service and dedication. We are glad to have such a multifaceted personality with a stellar record in academics as well as civil services to be interacting with our students. Without further ado, I now request Dr. Mukherjee to deliver his talk and interact with our students. So the talk would be of 25 minutes so that our students will have a lot of time to interact with you and ask you a lot of questions regarding your career and experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raj, for the introduction, and thank you, Dr. Singh, for introducing the entire thing to all of us. I think without wasting much time, let us get straight into the thick of things. I'll like to share my PPT with all of you first. I hope the PPT is now visible to all of you.
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah. So the point is, as already the faculty members of XIM University have told what is the topic of today's discussion, and that is the making of a civil servant, in which we'll discuss the context of role of public administration and governance. Fine. So the talk would be something like this. Let me tell you. This is the outline of the talk. We'll be talking about, are civil servants at all required in the 21st century? That's a basic thing. You know, Dr. Raj has already told me that it's 25 minutes talk and I have a constraint. But then, nevertheless, I'll try to plug in things within that time frame. But nevertheless, my point of concern over here to begin with is, are civil servants at all required, which I'll try to argue upon. And then we'll talk about some prominent civil servants. We all know, but there's no harm in, again, talking about them once at least. Then in the post-colonial scenario in India, the prominent civil servants that we had, their contribution, we'll touch upon them. Then again, we'll come to the question that why at all join the civil services? Many of you would be preparing for civil services, are preparing for it, as Dr. Singh actually pointed out, that you have a program for, you have an embedded program for preparation of civil services in your curricula. So the question comes up again and again, why join civil services? We'll talk about it. Then I'll come into the experience part. See, I'll be talking less about jargon, less about theory, because that is there in your academics. You will definitely go into it. But I'll talk about in practice what the civil servants do. That's very important. You should also know that once you clear the civil services examination, what you are expected to do in practice. So there I'll talk about a little bit. Then the 3 phases of making of a civil servant, quote unquote, we'll talk about it. And again, I'll get into some insider's experience, like the kind of administrative reforms that have been ushered in by the present government. Well, government has just changed, not exactly though, but then there has been an elections, general elections, new government. new system, whatever. But there are administrative reforms that we are getting into, and I'll just cite one such administrative reforms where corporate governance is getting a steady go ahead. So we'll talk about that. Then you might be feeling that civil servants have a lot of authority, a lot of power, so on, so on, so on, so forth. But then there are also checks and balances on the working of civil servants. We'll mention them. Finally, we'll conclude, and then as Professor Arokiraj said, we'll get into questions and answers. Well, a standard Cambridge definition of civil servant is someone who works in a department of a country's government, but who is not a part of its military. We are not a part of the armed forces. We are the civilian officers of the government of India. What civil servants do? Plethora of activities, right from arranging elections to collecting taxes, dealing with media, exports, imports, managing law and order. Because you generally tend to see, okay, the police, the IPS officer, okay, the district magistrate. But there are many things that people do. Okay, a district magistrate today might be posted in some department where it's which deals with exports and imports, or which deals with shipping. So a lot of variegated work that we do. Coming to the original question, are civil servants required in the 21st century? I still remember when I joined civil service, one of my seniors, he was quite senior to me, he has retired now, a very good person, no doubt. He asked me, why have you joined? You could have done, since you have done your PhD, you could have done your postdoc, you could have gone abroad. Why join civil services? Another pertinent question comes up in the 21st century, are civil servants required in a liberal economic ambience? And a general perception is that civil service or the public sector is less efficient than the private sector. Well, I'll answer that question, but in a roundabout fashion. Do we know this gentleman? I hope many of us know this gentleman is Vladimir Lenin. Lenin, who brought in or ushered in the Bolshevik Revolution, who was against bureaucracy. Now,
Dr. Mukherjee, sorry to interrupt you, but I think the slides are not changing.
I'll again, am I audible, by the way?
Yeah, you're perfectly audible. It's just the slides haven't been changing.
Are they changing now?
Yeah, they are changing now. Yeah.
Great. Right? Yeah,
it's fine. Yeah,
super. Sorry for the technical glitch. It always happens, you know. So my question is, are civil servants required? And in that context, I'm trying to give an example of this man who was very famous, Vladimir Lenin, but he was against bureaucracy. He was hell-bent against bureaucracy because he fought against bureaucracy. He wanted to usher in a radical revolution. Slides are changing, I guess. Okay. Now, once he came to power, once he got the reins of power, what he felt was that he had to employ in managerial and technical positions the same set of bureaucrats who were working under the Tsarist regime. He fought against the Tsar, he brought down the Tsarist regime, and now when he came to power, he had to bring in all those experts. That means Lenin himself had to admit the utility of civil servants. That was in the 20th century though, but the scenario has not changed much, you see. I hope the slides are changing. Please let me know if there is a technical glitch. I hope many of us know them. Nobel laureates, Abhijit Banerjee, Esther Duflo, right? In their book, Good Economics for Hard Times, both the Nobel laureates write like this: government is often engaged in problems which are far tougher than the issues which attract the private sector. Because a general perception is private sector is very competent, very efficient, public sector is laid back, lackadaisical in their approach. But, you know, Nobel laureates of the 21st century have a different perception. They say that the public sector is in welfare maximization, whereas the private sector is in wealth maximization. So welfare maximization, implementing government schemes for welfare mechanisms is a completely different ball game and requires a lot of challenge, a lot of efficiency to implement. So civil servants are required. I hope we all know him. Sardar Patel, our first Home Minister. Yeah. You want to say something, Professor Arokiraj?
Yeah, the slides are still not changing. So can you try keeping it in full screen? Maybe.
It's in full screen. I don't know. I'll just share again. I'll just close it and share again, right? Just a sec. Now are the slides changing?
Yeah, and it's full screen now.
Right. I'll just show the slides once, little bit. Right. We were talking about what Nobel laureates Duflo and Banerjee said. And they talked about that civil servants are very much required in the 21st century because of the fact that they are into welfare maximization and not wealth maximization, which the private sector is into. Okay. And as I said, we all know him, and that is Sardar Patel, our first Home Minister. And 21st April is Civil Services Day. We all celebrate it, keep it in our memoirs. That's the Civil Services Day, 21st April. Why? Because in 1947, it was Sardar Patel, the first Home Minister, who addressed the civil servants on probation at that point of time as the steel frame of India. So civil service is obviously a service for the people, but it's actually a frame without which, a scaffolding without which the structure of governance cannot really function. Well, the upshot is simple. Bureaucrats, civil servants, or permanent executives, in a more technical term, are indispensable. Political executive do change, but permanent executive remains stationed. Obviously, they have a time period up to 60 years. Yes, that is there, but overall, the system remains. Permanent executive provide the continuity of governance. In the 21st century also, we require people for diplomacy, for governance, law and order, associated issues, and they are equally relevant, and they will remain relevant. State functions with the policy execution of the permanent executive. We all know people from Pabat, people from political science, they have an understanding of state. And state has four components: territory, people, sovereign government, armed forces. Civil service figures in component number 3, sovereign government. Government without the 3 pillars, as Montesquieu had talked about, without legislature, executive, and judiciary cannot function. We are in the component of executive of the sovereign government. Now, with all these things said and done, let's look at some prominent civil servants. We all know them, but still no harm in looking at them. A great civil servant. He was German statesman and diplomat. He unified Prussia with all other Germanic states in 1871-72 through statecraft as well as war. Okay. He was a man who believed in realpolitik, pragmatic politics. None other but Bismarck. He executed a policy of blood and iron, policy of realpolitik, that is pragmatic politics, practical politics, politics without unnecessary morality. He created a political equilibrium in Europe. But King Wilhelm, that is, banished him. He had an ego problem with Bismarck. He banished him. And see what happened. You banish Bismarck, First World War starts, and finally Germany lost in First World War. So utility of Bismarck could be understood very easily. Do we know this gentleman? Gentleman with a cigar, with a cap. Pablo Neruda, a Chilean diplomat as well as a poet. He was a political activist, a socialist in fact, and a Nobel laureate in literature, a civil servant. Going back in time, way back, Machiavelli. We studied him in public administration, in political science, everywhere, in history also. In the 15th century Italian Renaissance, Machiavelli, he was a diplomat, author, philosopher, historian, and so on. Best known for his work, The Prince, in which he advocates his prince. I mean, why is he advocating his prince? Because he wants a unified Italy. And in there, he's advocating his prince to be as powerful as a lion, at the same time as cunning as a fox. Realpolitik again. Of course, nobody bigger than him, mentor of Chandragupta Maurya, who wrote Arthashastra, that is our Kautilya or Chanakya. He believed in realpolitik, but not unnecessarily through unethical means. That is the difference between Chanakya and Machiavelli in a sense. Well, coming to the next phase of our talk or our discussion, and that is civil servants in post-colonial India, after India got its independence. The first civil servant that I can think of, or I think most of the people will be able to think of, is this man, a pioneer, V.P. Menon, the man who, along with Sardar Patel, integrated the 500-odd princely states that we have had with India. Without him, without Patel and his contribution, it is unthinkable how these odd princely states would have really merged with the Indian Union after the Britishers quit India. Salute to him. Krishnaswamy Subramaniam, another pioneer civil servant. He is IAS of 1951 batch, founder director of the IDSA. I hope many of us know about IDSA, Institute for Defense Studies Analysis. Now it has been renamed as MPIDSA, Manohar Parrikar IDSA. And he was the founder of that IDSA, a great thinker, strategic analyst of the highest order, as well as a civil servant. I think very famous, very popular. TN Session, 1955 batch. He was a civil servant as well as a politician. And we all know that kind of administrative reforms, the powerful radical reforms that he had ushered in when he was the Chief Election Commissioner of India. KPS Gill, when we talk about insurgency, when we talk about counterinsurgency, nobody bigger, nobody greater than this man, KPS Gill, 1958 batch IPS. But along with this upper side of being a real cop, beating down the terrorists, controlling insurgency in Khalistani Punjab, but he was also a scholar. He was having a master's in English. He established this think tank, Institute for Conflict Management, existing in Delhi still now. He founded the journal Fault Lines, and I feel honored that I contributed 3 articles to Fault Lines of late. So great man, another great civil servant, post-colonial India. Lady Arundhati Ghosh, nobody can forget her contribution in the United Nations while India was arguing about CTBT, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. She was an IFS officer, Indian Foreign Service officer of the 1963 batch. Parveen Talha, Revenue Service officer, 1969 batch. First IRS officer and the first Muslim woman to become a member of the Union Public Service Commission. I was honored to have been a part of her interview panel. She interviewed me while I appeared for the Civil Services 2006. All of us know him, no doubt about that. Subramaniam Jaishankar, 1977 batch Indian Foreign Service. Honorable Minister of External Affairs. I don't know many of us know about him or not, but I think I thought it was good to introduce him to all of you. Upamanyu Chatterjee, 1983 batch IAS, renowned author. His book, English August, many of you might have seen the movie, English August, which was made into a film. And he got awards for his writing later on. Now, as I say, before we delve further, a more fundamental question now comes up in the 21st century to all of us, in front of all of us, that why join civil services? My blunt reply is, why not join civil services? So I'll tell you why. I'll put forth my case that why we should not join civil services. General reasons for joining are, obviously we all know, social status, authority, nationalism, a sense of nationalism, security of tenure, decent lifestyle, variety of work, attracted by role models that we just talked about, and finally, satisfaction in serving your country and public at large. Well, let's see these issues. If somebody wishes to administer, somebody really finds some elation in administering, then please join civil services. That's the real place to do it. You want to frame and execute policies for the government at the state level, at the central level, even at the international level, then please join civil services. You want to apply your domain knowledge in administration and hear what public administration and governance people who are studying that subject comes up becomes very pertinent. Especially PABAD as a subject of expertise would hold the key. Because if you have an exposition to this subject, an exposure to this subject, an early exposure to this subject, you will be in much greater stead compared to your compatriots in civil service when you join it. Even before that, we'll talk about it during the examination. So if you want to really apply your domain knowledge, and if you have PABAD as your domain knowledge, this is the place to be. Want to do occasional research along with your job? Many of us do it. I also do it. So please join civil services. You can do the job along with your research. There's no harm. Conduct rules also do not really stop you in doing occasional research. In fact, they encourage you in doing occasional research. Again, here public administration would be very helpful, because if you want to pursue higher research in public administration, you want to publish papers on public administration in that subject, then please go ahead. Use your practical experience in civil service, utilize them, use the data and your experience and write papers. Want to work for people at ground zero like a social activist, NGOs and all, then please join here. You'll get ample opportunities. Want exposure to politics? You have political shenanigans in mind, you have much greater bandwidth in your mind, please join civil services, because you'll get exposure to dealing with politicians, how to manage them, and then you become, you hobnob with them, and you later on can become a politician, no harm. Wish to go for higher studies? We have already talked about it, I'll again repeat it. Along with being an administrator, yes, please join, this is the place. And if you have PABAD in bachelor's and master's, let me tell you, it would be easier for you to get paid study leave for higher studies. For example, today, if I want to do a PhD in history, say, or PhD in some other subject, it will be difficult for me to get a paid study. But if I had, say, PABAD, or if I want to do a master's in administration, a master's or a PhD in administration, or a postdoc for that matter, it will be easier for me to get a paid study leave. Why? Because paid study leave is only for that subject which has direct correlation with administration, which has direct correlation with the work that you do. So you can understand your exposure to PABAD and governance really helps you later. Now, according to data that was published in the 131st report on review of functioning of recruitment organizations of Government of India, which was tabled by the Parliamentary Standing Committee, this is the data, a snapshot of the data that I have for you. You can have a look. From 2017 to 21, in these 5 years, you see many people from humanities have cleared the civil services examination. I'm talking about specifically the Union Public Service Commission civil service examination, which has around 700 or 2,000 seats per year. So going by that number of 700 to 1,000 seats per year, you have around 200 people from humanities clearing the examinations over here. That means around 1/5 or more people are from humanities. So you belonging to humanities, people from PABAD and governance, you have your place over here. You can see directly, the data doesn't lie. Well, in 2012, I also got this data. Almost 50% of the successful candidates had public administration as their optional subject in the UPSC civil services examination. That's a huge number, no doubt. Enthralling number for PABAD aspirants. Now, we all know, since you are preparing for civil services, you have a clear idea, but no harm in repeating it. PABAD has overlap with general studies compulsory papers in civil services examination. Look at these subjects, or the topics rather: governance, Indian constitution, union and state relationships, separation of powers between various organs of the state, dispute redressal mechanisms, parliament, state legislatures, executive judiciary functioning, quasi-judicial bodies, ministries and departments of the government. What is a department? What is a directorate? What is a headquarter? How do they function? welfare schemes for vulnerable sections, issues related to poverty, hunger, transparency, accountability, RTI, citizens charter, so on and so forth. All these are part of civil services examination syllabus. And they are also part of your public administration syllabus. So you can look at the complete overlap that these two things have. Well, now, as I said, I'll also cite some examples based on my experiences and interactions regarding what a civil servant actually does in practice. And here I'd like to cite examples with respect to, upcoming civil servants who are, in a sense, junior to me, and I really know them personally, and I've mentored them, and I find them really working great, going great guns. So let us try to see what they're actually doing. And you, being the aspirants of a civil service today, would definitely get encouragement by looking at these young civil servants, the way they are performing. This man I know very, very personally. I mentored him while he was preparing for civil services. And he is an IPS officer now, Kantesh Mishra. He's at present Superintendent of Police in Motihari district in Bihar. He is here, somewhere here. Yes, he is here, like here, along with his team in one of those counter-insurgency operations against the Naxalites. I have close connection with him because I sometimes go for field visits in the Naxalite domain along with him so that I get some first-hand data for my own research papers. And he definitely helps me quite a lot. Public outreach mechanisms, public outreach programs in Naxal Maoist affected areas, and Mr. Kamtesh Mishra is monitoring those programs. You can see always it's not the gun, it's winning the hearts and minds also, right? I mean, you cannot finish off the Naxalites just by using guns. Guns is one part of the program. Another part is you reach out to the people, you make them understand that the government is for you, the governance is working. So you be with us and not be with the extremists. Well, normal counterinsurgency operations along with air power support. And see, along with them, look at the drastic change from counterinsurgency operations to winning hearts and minds of the people to inspection of election booths during the general elections or other state elections. So kind of work that the varied kind of work that the IPS officer is involved in. Another junior of mine, Rajorshi Dashgupta, he is Indian Revenue Service in the Income Tax Department, presently posted in Patna as Joint Commissioner. Kind of work he does. Lot of Caesar raids. You must have seen that Ajay Devgan movie called Raid. So that kind of Caesar and raids they do. Obviously not in such a filmy manner, but definitely they do it very, very covertly and sometimes overtly. And collection of thousands of crores of rupees goes to his credit. Another junior of mine whom I mentored personally, Shekhar Chaudhary, at present in West Bengal. He is actually from Uttar Pradesh, from Jaunpur district, presently posted in West Bengal as ADM, Additional District Magistrate in Kalimpong. Kind of work that he has done or is doing, one of them is Tista floods, development work that we talk about. Area was ravaged by the floods, and then they get into that reconstruction mode. They also feed people in community kitchens, and he monitors the program. Coming back to another junior of mine whom I mentored, Devotos Chatterjee in the Indian Revenue Service, Customs, not income tax, but customs. At present, he is Deputy Commissioner, and he manages a lot of customs-related work at ports, special economic zones, land custom stations, and so on and so forth. It involves both desk work as well as field work. Another junior whom I mentored, Purnabhu Ganguly, is in the Indian Corporate Law Service. It's a new service and it's a very, very enterprising service. And let's see, you see, they during their probation, during their training, they also go abroad. All these service officers, they go abroad in good universities. They get exposure to education systems abroad. Here also, ICLS guys go to they go to National University of Singapore, where they are taught courses on public policy and corporate governance. So again, coming back to your PubAd and governance, if you have an early exposure to PubAd and governance, see how it connects to your career in civil service and it streamlines your path so easy. Again, though they are in corporate service, corporate law service, still the kind of variety kind of work they are doing, you see, They go into Nalgonda district in Telangana, where they review the status of primary health centers and schools and offer their recommendations. So they are going into district work also at times. So again, work is very, very multifaceted. Director level, Indian Forest Service, another All India service. We have 3 All India services, we all know. So when he was district forest officer, he established the Orchidarium, an endangered plants conservatory. Now, in Nicobar Islands, in Andaman and Nicobar, he was posted. Presently, he's posted in Mizoram. You see, as Deputy Conservator Forests, he planned and completed 50% work of a botanical garden at Port Blair. One photograph that I asked him to share with me, and I am pleased to share that with you, the Nicobar Orchid and Plant Conservatory that under his supervision was built up. Now again, I here like to point out, let us not think that only a single individual does these jobs. Obviously, he has an entire team and he monitors, he directs, he leads his team, he manages his team, and his team is also equally contributing to the growth of all these works. And as a civil servant, our job is also to lead and encourage our team so that the team also doesn't feel left out at any point of time. Okay. As Regional Deputy Director, as in Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, he was controlling crimes regarding wildlife. So you see, poaching, anti-poaching, all those aspects he will be looking into. At present, he is at Mizoram at Dampa Tiger Reserve. So from plant conservatory to tiger reserve, in between wildlife control. And another junior of mine at present posted in Kolkata itself as Deputy Commissioner of Police, IPS officer and a mother at the same time, managing the Kolkata Book Fair. This is one of the pictures from her management during Kolkata Book Fair, along with her kid, maybe 2-year-old, I guess, if I'm not incorrect, and she's managing it. Along with that, just not think that she's just a very, very sedate mother. No, not at all. She can fire guns also. And if you want to know whether power flows from the barrel of the gun or not, do not ask Mao Zedong, ask Indira Mukherjee. She'll answer you while she's training her comrades in a refresher training on non-lethal weapons. So you can understand the variety, the spectrum of work that civil servants are involved in. Now, making of a civil servant has 3 components, as I had already told you. First component is preparation phase. Many of you must have seen the film 12th Fail, right? So from there, you must have got some idea about the preparation. Many of you are preparing, so you have a complete first-hand idea. You must have seen this series called Aspirant that also shows you gives you some idea. Nevertheless, preparation phase is one period which makes you a civil servant, let me tell you. That's a very, very important phase. That makes you a firm individual. That makes you a solid, concrete human being. And preparation never goes a waste. I can tell you that. Then, the induction training phase after clearing civil services. Because there is a training phase of 1 to 2 years where you are on probation, you are tested, and you are given new refresher courses. I'll tell you what sort of courses you are given. And you build yourself up, you gel into the system. And finally, a journey which continues till you retire, and even sometimes beyond you retire, is a journey as a civil servant after the induction phase. Okay, so these are the 3 components of making of a civil servant. Preparation phase, we all know first stage is MCQ based. Second stage is based on analytical understanding and answer writing skills. It's not just simply that you mug up something and vomit. You have to apply your mind in writing answers. You must practice them well in advance. There are 4 compulsory GS papers, 1 essay paper, and 2 papers of a single optional subject of graduation level. Though it is said graduation level, but questions sometimes could be beyond graduation level. And public administration is one optional to choose from, a number of options. But let me tell you, it's a great optional to choose. I've already argued in favor of choosing that optional. Let me tell you my own experience. I was planning to take, in my time, there were 2 options. We had to take 2. So I was planning to take public administration and political science because I love both the optionals. But then I found out that the rule doesn't permit political science coupled with public administration. So I had to forego one. But since you are already studying public administration, many of you, please take this option. It is an optional which helps in the study of general studies of Indian constitution and governance, as well as it helps you in writing your essay papers. The syllabus of PAVAD, I've already told you, is in tune with the GS syllabi. Now, the training phase. In training phase, what sort of work experience that you get? That is exposition on command hierarchy, personnel administration, administrative law, legal issues like corporate law, civil, criminal, company law, depending on what service you are. Court cases, in whichever service you are, let me tell you, court cases will run after you. You cannot live without court cases because they will not leave you. Conduct rules. Whichever service you are, you will have conduct rules, whether it's All India service or Central Civil Service. Disciplinary issues, common to all the services. Vigilance matters, common. RTI, Right to Information Act, and answering those queries, common. Procurement mechanisms, common to all services. And field visits, industry visits. If you are in defense, you go to, say, defense PSUs, you go to the armed forces, you go to the borders. And if you are in district administration, you go to remote areas of districts, you go to villages, you try to learn and see firsthand how district administration works. The message, my friends, is very clear. An early exposure to public administration as a subject very much helps you in speedy understanding during the training phase. So during your preparation, during your training phase, that means during the first 2 phases of making of a civil servant, public administration holds the key. Now, returning to the journey of a civil servant, the larger part, in terms of time frame, the journey. And I'll be giving you one example of administrative reforms that I had already told you at the beginning, and that would be of corporatization. And I'll give you an insider's view to that because I have been through this corporatization myself. This Press Information Bureau notification came out on 26th July 2021, almost 3 years back. And this is what the government of India told to the public at large. To enhance functional autonomy, efficiency, and to unleash, look at these words, functional autonomy, efficiency, and to unleash new growth potential and innovation in ordnance factories. Now, what are ordnance factories? Don't confuse it with the term ordinance. Ordinance is something different. It's a promulgation which takes place in the parliament when the legislature is not functioning. That is ordinance. But ordinance is related to guns, cannons, to artillery, which is a integral part of the defense structure of the country. Okay. So that ordnance factories, there were around 41 ordnance factories all across the country. And government planned to divide those 41 ordnance factories into 7 divisions. Why? Because of this. This is what the government thought to be prudent to divide the ordnance factories into 7 domains. To enhance functional autonomy, efficiency, and to unleash new growth potential as well as innovation in ordnance factories. The government has decided to convert the units of ordnance factory board. Initially, it was a board under which there were 41 units. Now there will be 7 defense public sector undertakings. And in pursuance of the decision of the Union Cabinet, so this decision was taken by the cabinet level, not at any other level, at the highest level. And cabinet secretary is the highest ranking civil service officer. In pursuance of the decision of the unit cabinet on 16 June, the government of India has decided to form a directorate of ordnance, right? And you must be studying about these concepts of boards, directorates, and so on and so forth. You see, so now a directorate has been formed, which now looks after the personnel matters of all those civilian officers and the civilian staff and employees who were once a part of those 41 units. Okay. Again, to cut the long story short, the government of India has also decided to transfer the management, control, operations, maintenance of non-production units to the directorate. So now the directorate comes up, the board vanishes. Now, question that comes up is, after this reform, what is the scenario? What is the post-corporatization scenario of the Ordnance Factory Board? Now, administrative reforms that has opened up the floodgates is of service delivery. Now, time is the essence of service delivery. You cannot really hold back any decision unnecessarily, or you should not. That is not expected of you. So things that have taken place in the last 3 years is that people are now reacting very fast. Decisions are being taken faster at a faster pace. So that is one of the aspects of administrative reforms. Well, if there are pros, there are cons too. There is now a bigger challenge of managing number of court cases, because there are a lot of contempt cases that are coming up on compassionate appointment. And gradually there is an evolving public relations machinery, which already was started during the board phase, but now in the directorate phase, in the DPSU phase, where the defense public sector units, they're also starting up public relations machinery. They are trying to interact with the public at large, trying to sell their products in a better manner. Very quickly, I'll tell you my experiences when I was a PRO of the Ordnance Factory Board. We had to go for all these social media posts on a very regular basis. We prepared video films on major products of ordnance factories. We published our products as well as talked about a history in illustrated coffee table books. And we also published our annual product catalogs and so on and so forth. We had press releases on a regular basis. We gave rejoinders to media outlets. For example, if Hindu published something in the morning, it was our duty to rebut Hindu in the evening or at least in the next day morning paper. So all those time-bound machinery we had already started when we were talking about corporatization. Okay. We also gave training. These are mid-career trainings, because not only induction training, there are mid-career trainings also for civil servants. We gave mid-career training to PR personnel at Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Delhi, so on and so forth. Okay. Just some pictures to you, the kind of work that we were doing at that point of time when Ordnance Factory Board was slowly getting, corporatized. And just for your information, the kind of tweets that we were posting, initially there was no culture in ordnance factories to post tweets or to go into social media. But we started this mechanism. It was working really well. We were posting tweets, we were getting feedback, we were getting inputs, sometimes backlash too. But then that's part of social media. We have to handle that backlash, right? Why I showed you this histogram was the fact that look at this period of November 2020 and 2021, that snapshot, because this was the COVID period, 2020-21, right? And March, April, May 2021 was COVID second phase. I know it very well because I had my personal loss during the time I lost my mother in COVID 2.0. So this COVID phase, you can see the number of tweets, our social media presence really skyrocketed compared to other periods. So we were really working hard at that point of time to spread our message. What kind of message? This kind of message, because ordnance factories at that point of time were helping India's COVID fight by establishing pan-India PPE testing facilities. So ordnance factories were not just producing guns at that point, they were also producing centers which would be helping people live. Now, as I told you, all said about civil servants, guns, not guns, pens, power, everything. But are there checks and balances on people like me? There are. There are a lot of checks and balances, let me tell you. I'm not an arbitrary individual. There are a lot of things that can check me. What are the checks and balances? APR is one check, annual performance appraisal report. Your seniors rate you, that is one check. Right to Information Act is another check. I just cannot sign arbitrarily in the note sheets. I must give my proper reasoned decision as per rule. Vigilance complaints is another check. Mind you, anonymous complaints have no grounds, but complaint has to be proper with evidence and signed. Then vigilance complaints would be taken into cognizance. This photograph is one of the photographs which I like very much. Our Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi, and he was being greeted by one civil servant. To the left of your frame is one civil servant in sunglasses. There's obviously another civil servant in uniform, but I'm referring to the civil servant in sunglasses to the left of your frame, who is greeting our Honorable Prime Minister. Can you tell me what exactly happened over here? I mean, nothing. It simply looks innocuous, but it was not innocuous. I tell you what happened. He was an IS officer, district collector, young officer, got a small district, became a collector of the district. He was pulled up for wearing sunglasses while greeting Honorable Prime Minister. See, it's not harm in wearing sunglasses. Don't think that civil servants are prohibited in wearing sunglasses. Nothing like that. But there is something called protocol. While you are greeting Prime Minister or any other top ministers, cabinet ministers for that matter, some protocol has to be followed. If you have a specs, please do wear specs. But then if you do not have specs, wearing sunglasses, he was pulled up for that. And he was asked to explain. Show cause notice was served on him. So the question that comes up is, for a civil servant, what is right conduct? To understand that, we must know what is a conduct or a misconduct for that matter. But there are conduct rules. There are 25 such rules for central civil service officers. There are equal number of rules for all India service officers. Wherever you go, there are conduct rules. And there is a disciplinary action mechanism for civil servants. A misconduct occurs, then a misconduct is reported, a show cause is given to him or her. And if you cannot properly reply to the show cause, charge sheet is issued. Government service or the servant or the charged officer responds to the charge sheet. And then disciplinary proceedings begin like in a court of law. Okay, these are called quasi-judicial proceedings, which also you learn in your public administration, I'm sure about. What is misconduct? The Cambridge says misconduct is unacceptable or bad behavior by someone in position of authority or responsibility. So civil servants are in a position of authority or responsibility. So their behavior has to be impeccable. I'll give you one example, and I give this funny example every time when I lecture somewhere in civil service departments, that when a lecturer is speaking and you are sleeping on board, then that is misconduct. Well, when you are sleeping, that means you are supposed to be on duty and not sleep. But if you are sleeping on duty, that's misconduct, my dear friend. Now, more serious examples of misconduct. Unauthorized absence without telling if you go out. Without telling your superior, that is, immediate superior. Without taking sanctioned leave if you are on leave, that's unauthorized absence. Indiscipline. Insubordination is indiscipline. Forgery, great misconduct, grave misconduct in that sense. Impersonation. I sign on behalf of somebody else. Corruption, we all know, there's no doubt that's a misconduct. Sedition, a seditious approach against the government, using bad language against the government or against the security of the state. Trying to do something which can harm India's security interests, passing out or leaking information in defense is very, very important. You cannot really share information over WhatsApp because that's a source of leak and we are prohibited in doing so. You know, in Ministry of Defense, in South Block in Delhi, you're not allowed to carry your smartphones. You're only allowed to carry your small, that worn out period Nokia phones, which has no camera. Only that is allowed because of those seditious activities that can take place. Domestic violence is related to your domestic affairs, mind you. But then that can also get tagged into your misconduct and you can be liable to go through a disciplinary proceeding because of your domestic behavior. Most important conduct rule I'd like to share with you, my friends, and that is every government servant at all times has to maintain absolute integrity. And that integrity is related to financial matters. Number two, has to maintain devotion to duty. As I said, if you are attending a lecture, please attend it minutely, do not sleep. So devotion to duty. And do nothing which is unbecoming of a government servant. And that is the criteria, at times is sometimes arbitrarily also used to trap civil service, that what is unbecoming, what is not. But the courts have given long judgments on that. There is something called Fundamental Rule 56G. Sometimes you do read in the newspapers that some civil servants have been thrown out of their service. Some IS officers, some IPS officers have been thrown out. You might feel that, how can they be thrown out? Was it arbitrary? It was not arbitrary. Government has gone through steps, and this is that step. After attaining the age of 50 years for Group A officers or 55 years for Group B officers, there is a review of his or her entire career, that whether that person is fit to continue in civil service. And that is called Fundamental Rule 56 Clause G. And if it is found that the person is not fit to be retained in civil service, then the person is prematurely retired in public interest. Now, I don't know whether I've taken much more time or not, but I'd like to conclude. The kind of works that civil servants do range from one thing to another. A huge spectrum is there, but then they relate to things like these. They relate to things like natural justice, code of inquiry, that is quasi-judicial proceedings, court cases. They have direct connectivity with articles of the Constitution like 32, 136 of SLP, 226 of approaching the High Court directly, procurement, recruitment, RTI issues, file working based on hierarchy, overall command hierarchy. And all these issues, let me tell you, have direct correlation, at times indirect, but mostly direct correlation of your understanding of public administration as a subject. And to end my, whatever I wanted to discuss in my presentation is regarding the fact that this is civil service at the end of the day. This is service to the people of India. This is service to the people at large. And service at the end of the day derives satisfaction. When you see that people after retirement, when they come and get their pension, when they get their life certificates for pension and many other things, you derive satisfaction. When you get appreciation letters for your work, you derive better satisfaction. No money can buy this satisfaction, let me tell you. And as a head of office, when at the end of the month, when I sit with all these retirees personnel, and when they say that, sir, we have got all our pension papers and our pension is in place, I feel very happy. So that satisfaction cannot be bought by any other thing, let me tell you. So please join civil services only for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mukherjee, for this very fascinating talk. I think one of your last slides, which said service and satisfaction, it really sums up the enthusiasm you have for your work and how you're exhorting young minds to join the civil services. And it was really fascinating how your work spans not only government and security and stuff, but also a lot of creative pursuits and of course your own research. So this was really, I'm sure this would be really motivational for our own students. So I think we can start the Q&A now.